What's going on, everyone? Bran here from Bloody Breakdown, and today, Halloween Kills has dropped over a week ago. I've had time to watch it like 4 or 5 times. I'm gonna throw it in the mix, and we are going to re-rank the Halloween franchise post Halloween Kills. Now, before we jump in, I just want to be completely honest here. The Halloween franchise is one of my favorites, alongside Scream and Saw and Child's Play, even Blair Witch. Some of my favorite franchises out there, and Halloween for me is always in the top 2. Love this franchise. However, there are several entries that I absolutely refuse to defend. So with that said, 12 entries. Interestingly enough, 13 entries next year with Halloween Ends. Who would have thought that Michael would beat Jason to a 13th entry in their franchise? But neither here nor there. Folks, let's go ahead and jump in and re-rank the Halloween franchise now that we are post Halloween Kills. So starting out at number 12, the worst in my opinion, and let me stress that "in my opinion" thing real quick before we officially start this list. Ladies and gents, this is just my opinion. Obviously nothing official. This is all subjective. But yes, the least effective, the worst entry in the Halloween franchise, in my opinion, number 12 has to be Halloween Resurrection. And I'll just be honest with you, there's nothing really redeemable about this film for me. I don't see why it exists. My assumption is that it's, let's make money off the heels of Halloween H2O, which did fairly well. That's about the only thing I can come up with, because there's not really much of a story here. The characters are just bland. I gotta say, I'm not really a fan of the acting in this film. I don't know if it's the actors and actresses, if it was the direction. I don't know. It's crazy because this film was directed by Rick Rosenthal, who directed the original Halloween 2, which I think is a pretty damn good Halloween film. You'll see that one, of course, later on in this list. So I don't know what went wrong here. I don't know why this exists. There's very little, if any, I'll say no redeeming qualities about this film at all. And later on in this ranking, even the lower entries, I find redeeming qualities in all of these films. But there's just nothing here in Halloween Resurrection. Jamie Lee Curtis shouldn't have wasted her time with this thing. The Busta Rhymes thing is just, I mean, it's laughable, yeah, but it's grotesque to have Busta Rhymes beat Michael Myers' ass in this movie. But what should you expect by the time that fight rolls around? The whole movie has been garbage from the first frame to the last. Rick, I don't know what the fuck you were doing with this one, but wow, awful movie. Absolutely the worst in the franchise. You can't change my mind. As we move on to number 11, Dominique Othenin-Girard's Halloween 5. And what a shitbag this movie is. Literally any type of appreciation I have for this film, I understand is 100% nostalgia. This is one of the films that I really grew up on in the franchise. This movie came out when I was 2 years old. I really got into horror about the age of 9. So about 7 years after this movie came out. So yeah, there's some nostalgia here for me as to why I will watch it from time to time, why I do think it's better than Halloween Resurrection. But man, I gotta tell you, they just ruined everything for me in this franchise. Looking on it like a linear timeline, I think this was the first Halloween in sequential order that really dropped the ball. I thought the 4 that preceded this were very well done. Whether you like certain entries or not, I think it's kind of hard to deny that they're actually really good films. Up until this turd fell out of Dominique Othenin-Girard's ass, this movie is just bad. Everything they set up in the 4th one, they throw by the wayside. Michael's mask looks ridiculous. Michael's house looks like a fucking Universal monster movie, Monster Movies house or whatever. It's just bad. It is. And, it created so many questions that it never even tried to answer. They just said, fuck that. We'll leave that for the schmuck who comes along and directs part 6 or works on part 6. There's just very little, if anything, good about this movie. Michael crying, I don't know what the fuck that's about. I'll say this. I said earlier, I can find redeeming qualities about any Halloween film except for Resurrection. The redeeming quality for me about this film is the laundry chute chase scene between Jamie and Michael. One of the best in the entire series as far as the chase scene goes. I can't take anything away from that. But other than that, I mean, you kill Rachel early in a cheap way. You set up Tina to be the new final girl to help out Jamie. She's awful. Nobody likes Tina. Even if you say you like Tina, you don't like Tina. You're just saying that to be a contrarian. This movie's bad. Not a fan. Let's move on to number 10. The less said about this one, the better. Coming in at number 10 is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the Rob Zombie Halloween films. I think that this one is definitely the weaker one. But I mean, for me, I would have much rather seen Rob Zombie like take his hand at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for example, if he's going to remake something, because he has a very specific style as far as directing, as far as the characters he creates. I think we all know, like white trash, that seems to be one of the things he enjoys the most. So, you know, that's kind of why I go with Texas Chainsaw. Didn't really think he was a good fit for Halloween. I can appreciate you trying to give us something new with this one. I felt like maybe you should have made like a Friday film then if you wanted a 7-foot tall antagonist with mommy issues. Maybe you should have done that, because it just doesn't work out here. The white horse thing, it's been said that that's something Rob came up with on the fly like a couple of days before shooting, just because he saw a horse somewhere, a white horse, and thought it was cool. Man, I gotta tell you, it's just overall not a good movie for me. But I will say, and I mentioned earlier, I can find those silver linings for these Halloween films worth watching. And for me, it is the death of Annie Brackett, portrayed by Daniel Harris. Brad Dourif knocks it out of the fucking park. His performance when he finds his character's daughter dead. Man, I don't think any time in the Halloween franchise have I ever really felt that anguish of a lost character through another character in the film. So I will say, I think that Rob Zombie did that one thing better than anybody else has ever done. I'll give him that. Other than that, and maybe the fake out intro for this movie, kind of referencing the original Halloween 2 in the hospital, essentially the beginning and near the end are really the only redeeming qualities of this film for me. Everything else, it just seems like you wanted to do something different with the character, which I can appreciate, but wow, it just doesn't land for me. So that is, what are we on here? That was number 10, I guess. So moving on here to number 9. Number 9 in the franchise. This is The Curse of Michael Myers. Now, I know, I get it. A lot of people really don't like this one. A lot of people maybe think this one should have been lower in my list. But I'll be perfectly honest again. This one's totally predicated upon nostalgia. I know this movie is a disaster. I get it. I've seen both cuts of it. I kind of appreciate some things about the producer's cut more. And let's be real, certain things about that producer's cut are a lot more questionable if we're being perfectly honest with ourselves. But this is coming in at number 9 for me. Like I said, it is a lot of nostalgia. I won't even lie about that. But I got to tell you, I really like the mask in this movie. I enjoy Paul Rudd as Tommy. Would have liked to have seen him back in Halloween Kills, but I will say I did like Anthony Michael Hall's portrayal, so no issues there really on the whole. This is the one that kind of introduced that whole cult thing. This is the one that tried to follow up Halloween 5, and I think that's why this movie has so many issues. I know Joe Chappelle, the director of this film, wasn't really into it, but I think maybe, perhaps, if there weren't so many loose ends, if there weren't so many things to try to grab and tie together and do something in this last entry of what's referred to as the Thorn trilogy, maybe it would have been a bit of a better film. Also, this was the first time they had a major studio distributing film in Miramax, and I know that caused a lot of issues. And I'm not going to sit here and try to defend this movie, honestly. I'll say it's nostalgic for me. And, you know, maybe you disagree, but I think at the end of the day, this movie is way better than a Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 or a Halloween 5 or even Resurrection. But once again, you know, it's all subjective. So we'll move on here to number 8. Rob Zombie's Halloween. And, you know, like I said, I prefer this one, obviously, over Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I can appreciate the fact that half of the movie is a prequel and the other half is kind of a shot-for-shot remake in a lot of ways. I can appreciate that he wanted to do that in 2 movies, the original being more of a prequel, the second one being a remake of the original, which I think maybe would have worked better. But at the end of the day, my big issue is just revealing too much about what Michael is, where he came from, what his childhood was like. I don't really need to know all that. Michael is one of those characters that you don't know much about him intentionally, because he is a question mark. He is the boogeyman. He is the shape. What is he? I don't think there should ever really be a clear answer. If he's human, if he's supernatural, if he's cursed, if he's, you know, what have you. And I think that the explanations that are given in this movie are just so damn cookie cutter. But I got to say this, at the end of the day, it's a very brutal Michael. I'm not a fan of the 7-foot tall, brutish Michael, but he's brutal. He's a son of a bitch, and I do like that much about this movie. Once again, I kind of have issues with the whole white trash cast and crew. Well, I shouldn't say cast and crew, characters. But you know what? I think it's an okay movie. As far as remakes go, it's decent. If I'd had my druthers, I would have had somebody else besides Rob Zombie do it. And I know I sound like I'm shitting on Rob Zombie a lot in this video, and honestly, I'm not trying to. I love The Devil's Rejects. I like 31. There are a lot of Rob Zombie movies I really like and appreciate. And I think it probably has a lot to do with the Rob Zombie style being injected into Halloween. It just doesn't match for me. It doesn't fit for me. But overall, it's way better than the sequel that he gave us. And I think, you know, it is what it is. It lands itself, you know, kind of toward the lower end of middle here on my ranking as we move in to number 7. That being Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And, you know, here's another contentious Halloween film. A lot of people see it. They go, there's no Michael. I'm not interested. Fuck it. Moving on. And there are some people, and I consider myself in this camp, that are like, hey, you know what? I appreciate what they were trying to do with the anthology idea. This is a good movie on its own. I think that, you know, obviously, if it didn't have Halloween 3 in the title, I think that this movie probably wouldn't get the hate that it does from a certain percentage of the horror community or from the movie-going community. But I enjoyed this one. I really do. You know, it has nothing to do with Michael Myers. It has nothing to do with the story that was built up in its predecessors in Halloween and Halloween 2. However, they were going for an anthology piece with this one, and they kind of wanted to do that going forward, thinking Michael's dead after the second one. Each Halloween film, every year or two, can be another anthology tale of some horrors that happen around the holiday of Halloween. And honestly, that's not a bad idea. It's really not. But I think the flaw was that after you made the first one, you probably should have jumped into that anthology territory with the second one. And they didn't. They continued the story of Halloween, made us, fall for the story of Michael and even Laurie through 2 films, and then tried to pull this one on the third one. Maybe that's where they went wrong. I don't know. But I will say, I love this movie. I love Chalice. I love Cochran. I love Ellie. I love the characters in this movie. And I just really enjoy seeing, you know, it's something different. It is kind of like what Rob Zombie was trying to do with Halloween 2. Here's something different. But, you know, when you mix familiar and different, sometimes it doesn't come out right. And I think that was the problem with Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. With this one, there's nothing much familiar about it other than the holiday of Halloween itself. But man, Connell Cochran's a great antagonist. Chalice is the worst father in movie history. Not a good person. But damn it, I love this movie. And it kind of falls into the middle of the franchise for me. But I really enjoy it. As we move on to number 6 in the Halloween franchise for me, it's going to be Halloween H2O. Now, this is another one that I hear a lot of people kind of on the fence about, but I'll say this. Is it nostalgia? Absolutely. I mentioned earlier, I love Halloween, I love Scream. This is Scream-a-ween. This is Hallow-Scream, whatever you want to put it. Kevin Williamson obviously had some input in this film writing. You can look at the cover here and tell it's coming during that era post-Scream. It is. I think they're even watching Scream 2 in this movie, which is funny because in the original Scream, they're watching the original Halloween. So those two franchises are kind of interlocking in some shape way. But yeah, I like this movie, and I know that it's not without its flaws. Chris Durand, I believe his name, who portrayed Michael in this movie, clearly does not have an idea of what that character is. I think that does show through. Obviously, the mask was a big issue. The CG mask is grotesque. It's awful. I think they probably picked the best mask out of the lot they had, other than the Halloween 6 mask. Honestly, I probably, if I were in their shoes, would have just went with that one. I think there's obviously the issue of continuity when, the Thorn trilogy isn't supposed to exist in this universe. But, just seeing his eyes, the sit-up he did looked so lackluster. I do have a problem with the portrayal of Michael. But other than that, it's really not a bad flick. It's a good 20th anniversary movie. And like I said, there's nostalgia here for this too, because this is about 2 years into me being a really hardcore horror fan when this movie dropped. So this was the first Halloween movie I saw in theaters. So I can't discredit there is a huge nostalgia factor in this one for me, but I like it. It's definitely not without its faults, but I think overall it's a good Halloween flick. As we move into the top 5, we're going to start it out with Halloween 4, The Revenge of Michael Myers. One of the best sequels, no doubt, in the entire franchise. This is one coming out in 1988, 10 years after the original. This is kind of our 10th anniversary film. And they really do go back to basics. They go back to what worked in the original film. In a lot of ways, this kind of feels like almost a remake. Without being a remake. It kind of puts me in mind of Scream 4, honestly. But yeah, I think this one is damn near universally at least well-liked by most horror fans and Halloween fans. Most people don't really have too much bad to say about this film. Michael's back after an absence from Halloween 3. And, it seems that he's definitely upped the ante on the gore as he did in 2 to kind of keep up with where the slasher genre was back in the late 80s. And I really do enjoy this film. I really can't find much bad to say about this movie, honestly. The mask, I guess, may be one of the few things that I'm not fully on board with. The mask you see here on this cover of the film is the mask from the original film. That is not the mask that we see in the film. It looks kind of ridiculous. Michael always looks shocked, and it's extremely white. So yeah, other than that, I really have nothing bad to say about this movie. I thoroughly enjoy it. So let's move on to number 4, Halloween Kills. There it is. And about 50% of the viewing audience just left. Look, guys, I know there's a big debate on whether Halloween Kills is a good entry, whether it's a bad entry. It sparked conversation about Rob Zombie's films, I guess because of the level of brutality. It's a divisive movie amongst the horror fans, amongst the Halloween fans. But I got to tell you, if you don't like this movie, I have one question. Why? It's Michael Myers at his best. He's a brutal killing machine. There's great story building and world building in this film. I think it's one of the stronger entries in the franchise, but also keep in mind, this is part of a trilogy, and it's the second part of a trilogy. And a lot of times that middle part drags, and it's just not doing nothing but setting up for the ending or maybe tying up loose ends from the first. It's a transitional type of film in a lot of trilogies. I didn't see that in this one. I absolutely love it. The cinematography is great. The score is amazing. World building, brutal kills, high kill count. I think it's like 30 or more in this film. I don't understand why people don't like it. I thought that this movie was incredibly well executed. I couldn't be more excited for Halloween Ends, which, by the way, I'll probably do another re-ranking after that one as well if anyone's interested. Of course, that'll be like a year from now. But I love Halloween Kills. Like I've said, I've seen it about 5 times now. It's been out a week. And thank you, Peacock, for that, by the way. I went to go watch it in the theaters. I came home. I watched it again on Peacock, and I've watched it 3 more times since. It's just, for me, it's a good time. I enjoy it. And I know there are a lot of people out there that aren't fans, but you know what? That's okay, because like I said, it's all subjective. So let's move on to the top 3, because Halloween Kills damn near scraped the top 3 for me. So coming in at number 3 is David Gordon Green's 2018 film, Halloween. Obviously, the predecessor to Halloween Kills, coming in at number 3 here. I really appreciated this movie. I think a lot of people noticed that in many ways, the problem with the story of Halloween kind of came in with the sibling element. Now, don't get me wrong. I have some appreciation for that sibling element between Michael and Laurie. I also think that it gets rid of a lot of... I think adding the sister element kind of cuts a lot of the mystique of Michael out. So picking up after the first one, as this one does, kind of retconning and ignoring everything that's come in between, I think was a cool idea. We got Carpenter back on this one for the score. We got David Gordon Green doing an excellent job behind the camera. Danny McBride riding along. It turned out very well for me. I think this is one of the best sequels in the entire franchise. I think, if you're going to do something post Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, this is probably the way to go. And like I said, I have little to no quarrels with this movie at all whatsoever. I know this one was a bit divisive too amongst the community. A lot of people feel like nothing really happens in this movie. I couldn't disagree more. But yeah, this is another anniversary film. This is the 40th anniversary from the original, and it is in my top 3. So speaking of which, let's move on to number 2, which is Halloween 2 from 1981. And I got to tell you, like I said, the sibling element does cause some issues, but, and obviously that's when this started, but this is the only Halloween film that truly, truly feels like it is a continuation of the original. They pick it up exactly where the first one left off, even though this movie came out 3 years later. Jamie Lee Curtis's wig is funny as a result of that. But it really just feels so much like the original. Is it as good as the original? I don't think so. But it feels like it's the original. It feels like, Rick Rosenthal has said he tried to shoot this thing Carpenter-esque. And I know Carpenter went back and did reshoots and, whatever. But it does honestly feel the most like the original Halloween than any of the other ones. It's got some really good kills in it. They upped the gore for this one. Once again, to kind of compete with, Jason. His second movie was already on the way by the time this one came out. So yeah, I love it. It really is. And this is a nostalgic movie for me too. I think I overlook a lot of the flaws in this movie because it feels so much like the original. But I absolutely love it. And that really only leaves one spot available, one movie. And surprise, surprise, coming in at number 1, folks, is the immortal classic, John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978, the original that started it all. This spot still hasn't changed. As much as I love some of the newer entries like Halloween in 2018 or Halloween Kills, nothing's ever, in my estimation, going to top the original. And I'm not one of these purists who always puts the original first. I rank Child's Play 2 above Child's Play 1. There are a lot of sequels that I feel are better than we mentioned Friday the 13th earlier. I feel Jason Lives and the final Friday, the final chapter, are way better than the original. So I'm not one of these purists who are always going to give the original that number 1 spot, as you can see if you go check out some of my rankings here on the channel. But I mean, for me, this is the greatest movie ever made. For me, this is the best film ever made. I absolutely adore it. Obviously, I'll say it's perfect, but obviously it's got its flaws. That goes without saying. Once again, this is all my opinion, but I view this as the perfect slasher film. John Carpenter at his best, whether it be the score, whether it be the direction, whether it be the cinematography from Dean Cundy, whether it be the writing. It's just fantastic. It's a stand-up movie. My favorite film of all time, not even just in the genre or the franchise, just overall my favorite film. So this one's going to be really hard to dethrone. And if Halloween Ends thinks that they have that within them to do, I would say fucking bring it, because it's going to be incredibly difficult to ever topple this one. So there it is, folks. There is my re-ranked Halloween franchise post Halloween Kills. Let me know what you all think down in the comments section below. Do you agree with my ranking? Do you disagree? How is your ranking? How does it go? Let me know down below in the comments section. And yeah, I guess that's going to be about it for now. I want to thank you all for joining me. And yeah, keep an eye on the channel, because as Halloween draws near, I'm going to have more and more content coming your way. So with that said, I'm Bran from Bloody Breakdown, and we'll catch you all next time.